Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
The #1 long-form writer that helps SEOs outrank competition at the click of a button using real-time research and NLP. Start ranking content today with content@scale.ai.
Did you know that writing was the generative AI of ancient Greece? I'm not joking, it's true. So writing, even though it was there way before ancient Greece, it wasn't until that time that people started to believe that it was a gift from the gods, that it became a huge trend, and it started to spread like wildfire. Much like with AI, it's been around pretty much since the 50s, pretty much since the first computers existed. But obviously, we really saw it explode in the last 12 months with ChatGPT, specifically when, the tech giant gods gave it to all of us to use it and abuse it for anything and everything we wanted it to do so. But let's get back to ancient Greece for a second. So in ancient Greece, this, as I said, this was a hype, this was a trend. It was literally impossible to ignore it. But that did not mean that everyone agreed with it. So actually, many philosophers at the time were completely against writing. And one of them, who you might be familiar with, is called Socrates. So Socrates warned about writing because he said this trend would diminish our power to understand and internalize knowledge. He said writing would make us forgetful, lazy in thinking and memory skills. And not to make anyone feel attacked here, but how many of you can remember your loved ones' phone numbers at this stage? Because I certainly can't. He also said that dialogue was the most effective way of sharing ideas and learning. Now, what do we think about that? It's quite a straightforward thing to ask, I guess, at a conference. We all just dedicated time, money, effort to attend, to listen to people, to have conversations with one another. So, let's play a little mind game after this. Was Socrates right or wrong to feel writing? Now, I'm gonna give you a hint. This is a trick question, because he doesn't have to be either or. He made some valid points, so important that he didn't just stay famous and relevant within his time, but also today. I'm sure many of you know him or heard of him, not know him personally. So my point here is that, he made these points, but actually the reason why we know about him is because his student, Socrates, did record his debates, because he himself refused to write anything down. So that's an important point. But let's get back to AI and generative AI. So I mentioned already that AI has been around for a while, right? Since the 50s. What about generative AI? Well, in the marketing industry, companies have been using generative AI for good quality content generation, for email subject line generation, and all of that successfully for 10+ years. That's a long time. But actually, its origins are way before that. The start of generative AI is the 1960s, when Joseph Weizenbaum created the first generative AI chatbot. And this literally blew my mind when I read it, because guess what the purpose of the OG ChatGPT was? It was an AI therapist. And Joseph Weizenbaum created this because he wanted to prove that AI cannot replace humans. But unfortunately, he achieved quite the opposite. People loved this chatbot so much that he spent the rest of his career advocating for the responsible and ethical use of AI and concerns around its misuse. Yet, fast forward to 2020, I don't know how many of you have read, but GPT-3 made headlines by being used by a medical company telling a fake patient to commit suicide. And unfortunately, fast forward to ChatGPT, the interest in using ChatGPT as a therapist, because anyone who had a computer and internet access could use it, really have raised. And there's been, again, several headlines where people claimed that they lost a loved one because it's been encouraged by ChatGPT to commit suicide. So Does the idea of an AI
Monthly
therapist
reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose?
uncomfortable? I guess the slide kind of like fits that theme, so that's good. Yeah, so does the idea of an AI therapist make you feel uncomfortable? Because if it does, then so should any other use of AI. It should make you feel uncomfortable. Because the question isn't whether it's right or wrong to use AI in certain scenarios. The question is, how are we going to use this? Now, this is me, and these are my 4 areas of interest. So if you were to come talk to me after the presentation, I highly recommend one of these 4 topics. Specifically, if you want to talk to me about SEO or neuroscience, then potentially come talk to me today, because by tomorrow my energy levels might drop, and I potentially only want to talk about the Barbie movie, so just a warning. But we are here today to talk about the success we can see in this age of AI. So I explored some future of jobs reports, specifically the one that the World Economic Forum puts out there, because I wanted to understand, well, what does success mean for us in this age? And these were the top skills that we will all need in the next 5 years. They said these will be the most rising in demand, and we can see things like AI and big data. Not very surprising, a bit more tangible, we know sort of where to start. We see things like curiosity, critical thinking, creative thinking. Okay, this is a bit more ambiguous. And then we see things like resilience, curiosity, like, okay, I don't know what's coming in the next 5 days. I feel like I've been pretty resilient because I'm still alive and, coping, but like, what's that gonna mean for the next 5 years? And then we also see things like technological literacy, like everything changes so frequently, so that skill literally is going to constantly change and change and change in terms of what it means. And then this report also said that 44% of our core skills are expected to change within this period. Now, that's half of your core skills pretty much, right? So I'm gonna play therapist for a second, and I'm gonna ask, how does this make you feel? That half of the things that you currently rely on that give you security, stability, comfort, they will be gone. Because if you were to tell me that it feels fucking exhausting, like, I wouldn't blame you. So I'm gonna ask you this question. What's the biggest challenge you are facing today to get from where you are to where you want to be? Because you don't have to share this with anyone, just think about it. Because I asked this question in a survey, and I'm going to share with you some of the example responses that participants shared. So these are just snippets from them, but let's have a look at some of the themes. So we can see constantly changing processes. I'm totally stuck. In short, burnout. Or I'm expecting too much of myself, don't fit the expected mold. Now, does any of this resonate with you at all, with the challenge that you thought about? Or, at least the themes, like, is there something going on with the themes, for example, feeling overwhelmed from expectation, dealing with uncertainty and burnout, feeling like you don't fit in, or you're just in an unfriendly environment, and dealing with change. So I've got another story reference for you, and this story sums up all of these themes and emotions, and it's an incredible story. So this is the new Barbie movie. And if you haven't seen it yet, definitely go and watch it, because Barbie has to go through each and every single one of these challenges throughout the movie as a character growth. And at the peak of the movie, at the catharsis, she says this one sentence that is just so incredibly important and relevant to any of us just literally going through life right now, because she says that change is terrifying. And the reason why this is important to understand, because what we learn from this is that change and this feeling of feeling scared and terrified and unpleasant is actually what makes us human. This is the real difference. So this is literally the point where Barbie starts to first experience what it means to be a human. Now, I've got some good news and bad news with regards to your challenge. So hands up if you want the good news first. Wow, negativity bias there. Okay, you want the bad ones. Okay, so the bad news, I can't overcome your challenge for you, and no one else can. Like, no one else can fix it for you. it has to be you. That's the bad news. The good news, I'm going to give you some tools and practices today that can help with that. And before we go into that, the first thing is, step one, to know that your feelings are valid. And this is really, really important to know that. So I want you to think about the challenge that you have, because a challenge involves change, and validate the unpleasant feelings you have towards that. Stop saying like, it's fine, like I'm gonna deal with it. Like, of course you will. No one's questioning that. But to feel unpleasant about it, that's human, and you have to validate that emotion. Now, we need a strategy to overcome this. And as I mentioned, I've got a tool that I'm going to share with you. So we love tools, right? Now, this tool, just to sell it to you, can easily 10x your performance. It can improve your ability to focus, to learn new skills. It can help reduce stress. It can improve your decision-making. And it's not generative AI. It is, drum roll, your own emotional intelligence. Yay! I can see you're all so happy. This is exactly what you were hoping for, right? Like, I mean, I know. Trying to get a bunch of SEOs to invest into their own emotional intelligence being their single most important asset is pretty much like trying to sell your SEO strategy to the executive board members. Which is why often what happens to emotional intelligence is that we give it low priority, and then we decide to ignore it. And that's until it comes around and slaps us in the face, and now we have a burnout, or now be burnt out, or have some issues because of that. So this can, I think, really come in the form of like exhaustion from trying to, feeling like you're making one step forward, two steps backwards with your teams, trying to, convince your board members to buy into your strategy, but you have meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and it just isn't happening. And, just because Google changes things all the time, so our strategy and everything needs to adapt. So that's exhausting, obviously. Now, I've been talking about this specifically for the past 2 years on different stages and written some articles, but I couldn't help feel that something was still wrong. It felt like we're literally wired against like bettering ourselves. So I've done a lot of research, specifically to our fundamental definition of what emotional intelligence is. And what I found is that it's really outdated. So when you think about emotional intelligence, you're likely to think of like, right, I've got EQ, I've got IQ, I've got soft skills, I've got hard skills, and this EQ, soft skills part is really where emotional intelligence comes in. So you try to prioritize like, okay, do I focus on my hard skills or my soft skills? And it becomes this trade-off, this prioritization game. But that is fully incorrect. That's not how it works. That's not how emotional intelligence works, because it underlines everything. And this misconception, this understanding, comes from another misconception, another myth that's very, very popular, because we so often think about rational thinking and emotional thinking. But let me tell you, our brain is not rational or emotional. This is not supported by neuroscience, even though there are articles out there, there are marketing companies building strategies on this, that we need to understand instinct and impulsiveness and all of that. It's not how it works. So next time you think like, this is really rational, yeah, that is just you feeling comfortable about your own logic and reasoning. And I'm going to say that again. Rationality is the feeling of comfort with your own logic and reasoning. And that explains why when you go in front of executive board members and you present your strategy and you tell them you're like, of course they're going to buy into this, this is the logical thing to do. And they're like, nope. That's just whatever their logic is, that's what they feel comfortable with. So if our brain isn't rational and emotional, then what is it? Well, our brains are adaptive. And Julia already talked about this. This literally means neuroplasticity. Our brain changes, rewires itself all the time through learning, through experience, and, very importantly for today, through emotions. So it's really important that we understand what emotions actually are. And a much higher qualified person, Lisa Feldman-Barrett, who's an actual neuroscientist, has her own lab, literally researching emotions in her lab, published the theory of constructed emotion in one of her books, which I have in the references as well. And the word constructed is highlighted here, Because so often we think about emotions as something we are a victim of, or they come as a response, but they are not. They're literally constructed within our brains. And they're constructed based on past experiences, based on these learnings, based on what we know about emotional concepts. And also another thing that we're going to focus on, because we can have control of it, is affect. Affect plays a huge part in how we construct these emotions. So what is it? If I were to ask you today, like, how are you feeling today? You could describe it with affect without saying emotion words, right? You could be like, I started my day in low pleasant mode. I had a good night's sleep. Then I got, into high pleasant mode because it was like, ooh, it's brightonSEO. Then I realized I have to catch the train, so I went into high unpleasant as I was running. Then, I was really tired, so I went into low unpleasant. But now that I'm here, I'm kind of like mid-high pleasant mode at the moment. Now, obviously, no one talks like that. That would be really weird. So if I ask you, how are you feeling today? The most likely response, at least on this side of the word, that you're going to give me is that I'm fine. Such a simple answer, because it's metabolically a lot less expensive to us to say simple things. But there is so much going on behind the scene. And while I don't suggest you start talking in, affect mode or something, it is really important that you can tune into that affect and understand what's going on. And we actually have a sense for that. It's our sixth sense called interoception. And the term interoception has only been around for 100 years in science specifically, but its practice is not particularly new. It's literally mindfulness. And if we look at yoga philosophy, it's been around for 5,000 years. But interoception essentially refers to your sense of internal bodily sensations. So that can be things like heart rate, your breathing, feeling cold or warm or tired, all of these things. And the reason why this is important, because once you need to understand that intelligence and emotions cannot be separated. So even if you're thinking, right, like, how is this relevant to my job? Like, surely I'm just, using my brain, using my intelligence for that. Well, you're also using your emotions. So it's important to understand that. Now, this is a redefined version of emotional intelligence that I'm working on. So emotional intelligence refers to your ability to understand and make sense of the relationship you have with yourself and with your environment. And that will help you not just with like, okay, I need to understand my emotions and my connections with people, but also how do I learn? How do I react to change? How do I go through difficult times? Things like that. This is important, but because just as no two websites are the same, our brains are also unique to us. Our brain wirings are also unique to us. So whether or not you start to canonical all of your bad habits to your parents, these bad habits will still live on your side, and visitors will still perceive it as yours. So it's important that you deal with it. So it also suggests that when we have the same goal, we want to achieve something, we want to, be productive, excel, all of that, we will still take different journeys. So that's why a lot of times, there are standardized trainings in the workplace for skills like what we've seen before, like critical thinking and all of that. There are several methods that you could go through, but they won't work the same for different people because of this unique wiring. Your optimization has to be unique to you. And the bigger, the messier rule also applies here, just as in SEO. So the more unhealthy habits, traumas or toxic environments or boundaries, as it's been mentioned before, lack of boundaries have you had in the past, the more time it will likely take to actually untangle these, which means, so the next one is that you would also want to check, if you were to do an SEO strategy, you would want to know before you start optimizing if that site had a penalty on, right? Because otherwise, you're going to deal with a lot of wasted effort. It's the same with optimizing our emotional intelligence. You want to know if you're suffering from anything, like any sort of mental health challenges or physical health challenges or anything like that, because that's literally your brain giving yourself a penalty. And unless you deal with that, you're wasting a lot of time trying to optimize. So the required investment, therefore, will be different for each and every one of us. Now, I'm going to finish quickly with 3 practical solutions that you can start doing today with absolutely minimal effort. The most important thing is that you start doing some of these consistently. But the first thing is personality tests. And here, the core is on, or the core importance is on reflection. So there are personality tests like Myers-Briggs. 16 personalities is a free one online. I have these links after the presentation. DISC. But honestly, if you just want to do an online quiz on which Star Wars character you are, just do that. Because it's not the personality test that matters. What matters is the reflection part. That you do it, you read the results, and you see how they make you feel. You see what you learned about yourself and your patterns. And I also recommend that you do these like maybe every year and see how things change. Again, not within the results necessarily, but how you feel about it. Have you learned something else that's new, or have that confirmed something that you knew about yourself? Next one, interoceptive awareness. So if you're already doing mindfulness and meditation, for example, then that's great. That's part of that. But if you know I know that for a lot of people that's sort of difficult to get into. One thing you could do is to start to feel your own heartbeat. That's something that awakens, and it's within the science, and it awakens this interoceptive awareness. And this is something you could do daily. Just try to tune into, how easily can I detect my heartbeat? How sharply can I feel it? And then, of course, how fast or slow is it racing? Like, if you go out tonight, how is it going to be, like after the party, waking up tomorrow? Versus how is it when you're preparing for a presentation that you're going to do? Or like mine is like pretty fast right now, for example. Or how is it when you're on holiday and chilling next to a pool or something? And just start comparing this. So this is definitely something I recommend you do for at least 3-4 weeks and collect that data and start analyzing it. And the last one, breathing techniques. There are a bunch of this, and we've run out of time, but I really, really would like to do this. So there is one specific that's been made very popular by Andrew Huberman, who's again a neuroscientist. He's got Huberman Lab. It's called the physiological sigh. And this is the known quickest way to regulate stress and just in general, this high unpleasant affect. And the way how it goes is that you do 2 inhales through the nose. So do like one long one, and then top it up. And then one long exhale through the nose again. So I'm going to ask everyone to do this now. So sit up. I'm going to guide it. So you're going to start with one long inhale through the nose. And then when you're almost at capacity, top it up through the nose. And then slowly exhale through the nose again. Very slowly as you can. So that is a reset of the breath, neuroscientifically speaking. Now, you do not have to do your overcoming the challenge and the strategy alone, but you are the only one responsible. And that might feel scary, that might mean a lot of responsibility, but it means control. Control of the future success you're going to have. I would love to know what you think about emotional intelligence, so please come talk to me after, and then you can access my article on these 3 practices and emotional intelligence here, and follow me if you would like, and there are references as well. Thank you so much.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.